What if I told you something most people never hear? The reason you can't stick to just one thing, the reason your interests keep shifting, the reason you feel too curious, too creative, too multi-passionate for this world, is not a weakness. It's not confusion. It's not lack of discipline. And it's definitely not failure. It's a signal that you were never designed for the old system. See, the old world was built for people who could choose one path, stay quiet, stay loyal, and repeat the same skill for 30 or 40 years. One job, one title, one identity. But that world is disappearing right in front of us. Careers are changing faster than degrees can keep up. Industries rise and collapse overnight. AI is replacing roles that once felt safe. And suddenly being good at only one thing isn't security anymore. It's risk. Now here's the part most people don't realize. If your mind naturally jumps between ideas, if you're interested in creativity and logic, if you love learning but hate being boxed in, you're not broken. You're early. Your brain is already tuned for the future most people aren't ready for yet. A future that doesn't reward narrow paths, but rewards connection, adaptability, and people who can think across multiple worlds at once. That future has a name. It's called the M-shaped future. A future built for people who don't grow in straight lines, but in powerful patterns. And if you're still watching this video, if something in these words feels uncomfortably accurate, then there's a very high chance this message isn't random. It's meant for you, because the people who feel too much for today are usually the ones built for tomorrow. For decades, we were sold one powerful idea, and most of us never questioned it. Pick one thing, specialize, do it for the rest of your life. Doctor, engineer, lawyer, accountant. One decision was supposed to define your entire future. One path, one ladder, one identity. This way of thinking created what's known as the I-shaped career. Go deep in one narrow skill, become an expert, and stay there. And to be fair, for a long time, it actually worked. The economy moved slowly. Technology evolved in predictable steps. Jobs lasted decades. Loyalty was rewarded with stability. If you mastered one thing, the world would make space for you. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. That world is gone, quietly, rapidly, and permanently. Today, technology doesn't move in decades. It moves in months. Entire industries rise and fall before people finish their degrees. Roles that once felt untouchable are being automated, outsourced, or replaced by AI. And suddenly the promise of safety through specialization has flipped. Being only one thing is no longer security. It's vulnerability. Because when your entire identity is tied to a single skill, and that skill becomes irrelevant, you don't just lose a job, you lose direction. This is why so many talented, hardworking people feel stuck, anxious, or replaceable. Not because they failed, but because they followed advice that expired. The I-shaped path was designed for a stable, predictable world. But we now live in a world that rewards speed over certainty, adaptability over loyalty, and range over repetition. And in this new reality, the old rule of pick one thing forever isn't wisdom anymore. It's a risk most people don't realize they're taking until it's already too late. If you're someone who gets bored faster than most people, if you learn something quickly, master the basics, and then feel an urge to move on, if one part of you loves creativity, while another part craves logic and structure, and if deep down you feel guilty for not sticking to one passion the way everyone told you to, there's a good chance you've spent most of your life feeling lost. Not because you lacked direction, but because you were judged by the wrong rule. Growing up, people probably didn't know what to do with you, so they labeled you. Confused, unfocused, not serious enough. Maybe teachers told you to concentrate. Maybe family members asked, "Why can't you just decide?" Maybe you watched others pick a single path and move forward while you kept questioning yours. And slowly you started questioning yourself. But here's the truth that changes everything. What if the problem was never you? What if the system simply had no space for people who think like you? Because traditional systems are built for straight lines. Start here. Move there. Climb step by step. Don't look sideways. But multi-interest people don't grow that way. They grow in patterns. They connect ideas from different worlds. They see relationships others miss. They carry skills from one area into another without even realizing it. When they're forced into a single lane, they don't fail. They suffocate. That restlessness you feel isn't a lack of discipline. It's your mind asking for complexity. Your curiosity isn't a distraction. It's a survival instinct. Multi-interest people were never meant to repeat the same task forever. They were meant to evolve, combine, and reimagine. But in a system that rewards sameness, exploration looks like instability. So instead of being nurtured, you were pressured to shrink. To choose less, to want less, to be less. And when you couldn't, you assumed something was wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. You were just trying to grow in a world that only understood straight lines, while your mind was designed to move in powerful, interconnected shapes. And once you understand that, feeling lost stops being a weakness. It becomes the first sign that you were meant for something bigger. Now let's talk about what's actually replacing the old model. Because the world didn't just break, it evolved. First, there was the I-shaped path. One skill, one identity, one lifetime role. Then people realized that wasn't enough. So the world shifted to the T-shaped model. Go deep in one core skill, but understand a little about everything around it. Know your craft, but speak the language of other fields. And for a while, that worked too. But here's the reality. Broad knowledge alone is no longer the advantage. We're now entering something bigger, something more powerful. This is the M-shaped era. M-shaped people don't just have one deep skill, they have multiple areas of real depth across different domains that connect in ways most people never think to combine. This isn't about being average at many things. It's about being strong at several. Think about it. A marketer who understands code doesn't just run ads. They build systems. A designer who understands psychology doesn't just make things look good. They influence behavior. A content creator who studies finance doesn't just entertain. They educate and monetize intelligently. A developer who understands storytelling doesn't just write software. They create experiences people actually care about. These aren't random skills collected out of curiosity. They're connected skills. Skills that multiply each other's value. This is where the future is heading, because real problems are no longer simple. They don't live inside one department. They don't belong to one title. They sit at the intersection of technology, creativity, communication, and human behavior. And M-shaped people thrive at those intersections. They don't wait for permission to switch lanes. They build bridges between them. In a world where AI handles repetition, the highest value comes from people who can combine logic with intuition, combine systems with stories, Combine data with empathy. That's the M-shaped advantage, and once you see it, you realize something powerful. The future doesn't belong to people who know the most about one thing. It belongs to people who know how to connect many things into something new. Here's the shift most people still don't see coming. The future doesn't reward loyalty the way it used to. It rewards adaptability. It doesn't care as much about where you studied. It cares how fast you can learn. It doesn't need people who repeat tasks perfectly. It needs people who can think creatively when the rules change. And it doesn't reward narrow specialization anymore. It rewards context, the ability to see the whole picture. This is exactly why the future quietly favors M-shaped people. Because while machines are getting better at tasks, they're still terrible at meaning. I can analyze data, write code, generate content, and automate workflows. But it struggles with things that don't fit into clean categories. It struggles with cross-domain thinking, connecting ideas from different fields to solve new problems. It struggles with human judgment, understanding nuance, ethics, and consequences. It struggles with emotional intelligence, reading the room, understanding motivation, influencing people. And it struggles with pattern recognition at a human level, seeing signals before they become obvious trends. This is where M-shaped people naturally operate. They live in the gaps between disciplines. They move between worlds. They translate ideas from one domain into another. While others are focused on protecting a single role, M-shaped people are quietly building options. They don't panic when industries shift because they can pivot. They don't fear change because change is their natural environment. And that's where opportunity hides, not in obvious job titles, not in crowded career paths, but in the spaces no one else is looking, where multiple skills overlap. When you can combine knowledge instead of defending it, you become harder to replace. Not because you know more, but because you see more. In the future, value won't come from doing one thing better than everyone else. It will come from understanding how everything connects. And M-shaped people aren't trying to catch up to that future. Look closely at the people creating the most value today, and a clear pattern starts to appear. They're not winning because they mastered one narrow skill. They're winning because they learned how to combine. Founders who succeed long-term don't just understand technology. They understand people. They know how culture, timing, and behavior shape whether an idea lives or dies. Code alone doesn't build a company. Connection does. Look at top YouTubers and digital creators. The ones who last don't just talk well on camera. They understand psychology, what keeps attention, storytelling, what creates emotion, and data, what actually works. They don't guess. They design experiences. Then there are creators who blend education with entertainment. They make learning addictive, not boring. They turn complex ideas into stories people want to share. That's not a single skill, that's a stack. Even in traditional careers, the most valuable professionals are the ones who pivot across industries. They bring ideas from one world into another. They see solutions insiders miss because they're not stuck in one mindset. These people aren't masters of one thing. They're masters of combination. And in a world flooded with specialists, the rarest and most valuable skill of all is the ability to connect what others keep separate. That's where real leverage lives. School was never designed to prepare you for this future. It was designed to create order. From day one, you were trained to sit still, follow instructions, and move at the same pace as everyone else. You were rewarded for obedience. not adaptability. The system favored memorization over understanding, linear progress over exploration, and single, correct answers over original thinking. Do well on the test. Don't question the process. Stay in your lane. And if you learned fast, got bored, or asked too many questions, you weren't encouraged. You were managed. But the real world works differently. It doesn't reward people who wait for instructions. It rewards people who stay curious. It doesn't care how well you memorize information. It cares how well you can connect it. It doesn't ask for perfect answers. It demands better questions. That's why so many intelligent, capable people feel behind today. Not because they lack talent, but because they were trained for stability in a world that now runs on change. They followed every rule, did everything right, and still feel unprepared. Because the world they were trained for quietly expired. And the people who feel most out of place now are often the one whose minds were never meant to fit inside a classroom box in the first place. Here's the truth no one tells you, because most people don't understand it. Having too many interests is not a liability. It's an advantage that was never explained to you. When you're interested in many things, you don't see the world in isolated pieces. You see systems, not silos. You notice how one decision affects another, how ideas from one field quietly shape outcomes in another. That's not distraction, that's pattern awareness. People with multiple interests also learn faster than average, not because they're smarter, but because new information has more places to land. Every new skill connects to something you already know, creating shortcuts others don't have. And when change hits, and it always does, you adapt before others even realize what's happening. While some people panic when their single skill loses value, you adjust, you pivot, you evolve. Because you're not emotionally attached to one identity. You're attached to growth. This is why multi-interest people rarely get stuck forever. They might feel restless, they might feel misunderstood. But they keep moving, they upgrade themselves quietly, while others defend the past. Your curiosity isn't random, it's directional. It pulls you toward the intersections where innovation happens, where creativity meets logic, where technology meets human behavior, where opportunity hides in plain sight. The problem was never that you couldn't repeat the same thing endlessly. Your mind simply wasn't built for repetition. It was built to explore, to connect, to evolve. And in a world changing this fast, the people who can explore without fear are the ones who don't just survive. They lead. Now let's make this practical. Because understanding the M-shaped future is one thing, but building your place in it is what actually changes your life. Step 1. Stop apologizing for your curiosity. For years you were taught to treat your interests like distractions. They're not. Your interests are data. They're signals showing how your mind works and what kinds of problems naturally pull your attention. The moment you stop fighting curiosity, you start learning faster and with purpose. Step 2. Group your interests instead of judging them. Don't look at them individually. Look for patterns. Most interests fall into a few core themes: communication, technology, human behavior, creativity, and money. When you step back, you'll notice your interests aren't random at all. They orbit the same ideas from different angles. That's the beginning of an M shape. Step 3. Stack skills instead of chasing passion. Passion is unreliable at the beginning. It shows up after competence. Skills, on the other hand, create freedom. The more valuable skills you stack, the more options you unlock. And when skills combine, their value doesn't add, it multiplies. You don't need to find your one true calling. You need to build capability. Step 4, monetize the intersections. This is where everything changes. Value doesn't live in isolated skills. It lives where 2 or 3 skills overlap. When communication meets technology, you create influence. When creativity meets human behavior, you shape attention. When knowledge meets money, you create leverage. Look at where your skills intersect and aim there. That's how you stop feeling scattered and start becoming unstoppable. Because an M-shaped path isn't built by choosing less. It's built by connecting more, intentionally. This is the shift that ties everything together, the shift most people never make. Stop asking yourself, what do I want to be? That question locks you into a box before you even understand your potential. It forces you to choose a title, a label, an identity, and then defend it even when it no longer fits. Instead, start asking a better question. What problems do I want to solve? Because problems evolve, industries change, tools upgrade, but meaningful problems always create opportunity. When your identity is tied to a job title, change feels threatening. But when your identity is tied to problem solving, change feels natural. This is why flexible people don't panic during transitions. They don't see themselves as a designer or a marketer or a developer. They see themselves as builders, connectors, translators. They update their skills the same way software updates, without emotional resistance. Your identity was never meant to be fixed. Fixed identities break under pressure. Flexible identities adapt. They expand. They absorb new skills. They shed outdated ones without guilt. In the M-shaped future, the most valuable people aren't the ones who protect a single label. They're the ones who can reinvent themselves without losing confidence, who can learn without ego, who can evolve without fear. So stop trying to decide who you'll be for the rest of your life. Decide what kind of problems excite you, what kind of challenges make you feel alive, what kind of impact you want to create. Let your identity grow from that, because the future doesn't belong to people who cling to certainty. It belongs to people who can evolve again and again without breaking. If you've always felt different, if choosing just one path never felt like enough, if your mind refuses to stay inside a single box no matter how hard you try, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not lost, you're not late, and you're definitely not failing. You're early. You sensed the shift before the world had a name for it. You felt the limits of the old system before it started cracking. While others were comfortable repeating the same story, you were already searching for a bigger one. And now the world is finally catching up to how you think. The future doesn't belong to people who fit perfectly into one role. It belongs to those who can connect, adapt, and evolve. To those who see possibilities where others see boundaries. This is the M-shaped future. A future built for curiosity, range, and courage. A future where your many interests aren't something to hide, but something to leverage. And you were built for it. So if this message hit you, if it put words to something you've always felt but couldn't explain, don't ignore that feeling. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment M-shaped below, because the people who understand this shift, the ones who feel out of place today, always end up finding each other tomorrow.